So, the recent conflicts in the Middle East have really ignited a crisis that goes way beyond the battlefield. Today, we're going to dig into how the region's most vital resource, water, is under an unprecedented assault from two different directions, creating an environmental catastrophe with absolutely devastating human consequences.
I want to start with a question that gets right to the heart of this. It honestly sounds like something straight out of science fiction, but this is real, and it's happening right now. What happens when the very rain that falls from the sky becomes a poison?
You see, the situation is so incredibly complex because the region's water supply is being attacked from two completely different directions at the exact same time. This isn't just one problem. It's like a terrifying pincer movement against an entire population's lifeline. So on one side, you've got this localized but intensely toxic contamination literally falling from the sky. And then on the other, there's this widespread maritime crisis that's threatening the drinking water for tens of millions. It's two separate battlefields, but they have one shared victim, the water supply.
Okay, so how is this actually happening? Let's really break down the mechanics of how the water is being poisoned on both of these fronts, because it's pretty wild.
All right, first up, from the sky, we're seeing this phenomenon called black rain. And no, this is not a natural occurrence. It's a direct result of military actions. We're talking airstrikes on huge fuel storage facilities, like the one near Tehran, that send these massive plumes of toxic smoke into the atmosphere. And what goes up must come down as contaminated rain.
And listen, this isn't just dirty water. It's a chemical cocktail. You've got soot, which is what makes the rain dark. You've got sulfur dioxide, which makes it acidic. And then you have these really nasty cancer-causing compounds called PAHs. That's short for polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. They're released when fuel burns, and this whole toxic mix is seeping into farmland, into reservoirs, and into the groundwater that people drink every single day.
Now, let's turn our attention to the sea, where an equally urgent crisis is unfolding. You have to understand, much of the Gulf region literally survives on desalinated water. That's just seawater that's been made fresh. These incredible high-tech plants line the coast, and they are the main source of drinking water for millions. But their location, well, it makes them incredibly vulnerable. And here's the crucial part. They face a double threat. First, they can be targeted in direct military strikes, which we've already seen happen. But second, and this is maybe even more insidious, are the oil spills. Oil from attacked tankers can drift right into their intake valves, clogging up the super-sensitive filtration systems and forcing a total shutdown to avoid poisoning the public water supply.
So we've seen how the water is being threatened. But what does this mean for the people who actually depend on it? The human cost here is immediate, and it is absolutely staggering.
Just look at Tehran. We're talking about a city of 10 million people. Right now, that entire population is facing a severe health emergency, as this black rain runoff threatens to contaminate their whole water system.
And this isn't just a future problem. The effects are already being felt. The Iranian Health Ministry reported that in a single week, just 1 week, over 170,000 people had to get emergency care for respiratory and heart problems that were directly linked to the toxic air from these fires.
The impact can also be incredibly localized and brutally fast. A single strike on the desalination plant on Qeshm Island cut off the water supply for 30 villages in an instant. It just goes to show how one attack can have a devastating ripple effect on thousands of lives. You know, the really gut-wrenching part is that even if all the fighting stopped today, right now, the environmental damage is already locked in. So now we have to shift our focus from the immediate crisis to the long-term consequences that are going to plague this region for generations to come. See, the heavy metals and all those hydrocarbons from the black rain, they don't just disappear. They're going to poison agricultural soil and well water for decades. And in the warm, enclosed waters of the Persian Gulf, oil spills break down incredibly slowly. We're talking 5 to 10 years before marine ecosystems could even begin to recover.
So this brings us to what might be the most terrifying part of this whole analysis. The current situation is already a catastrophe, right? But what happens if it gets worse? The escalation scenario here isn't a slow decline. It's a rapid, terrifying collapse.
So let's just consider a critical question that comes from the source material. What if there's half as much more damage, a 50% increase in destroyed infrastructure? Well, the outcome isn't just 50% worse, it's exponentially worse. Because at that point, you're not just breaking more things, you're breaking the very systems that are supposed to fix things.
A 50% increase in damage would trigger a terrifyingly fast domino effect.
First, the regional emergency response systems, which are already stretched thin, would completely overwhelmed. That leads to step 2, a total system collapse of water purification and medical services. And from there, we're not talking about months, but weeks before we see the final step, mass displacement and the rise of water refugees fleeing cities where the taps have run dry and the air is literally unbreathable.
And all of that brings us to our final heavy question. When essential resources that we all need to live, like water and air, are deliberately or recklessly targeted, it forces us to ask something pretty difficult about modern conflict. Is the environment itself becoming the final and most enduring casualty of war?